Republican Congresswoman Liz Cheney, vice chair of the committee, is dropping another bombshell. Today, she implied the committee is also looking into potential criminal activity by Donald Trump.
Mr. Meadows' testimony will bear on another fundamental question before this committee, and that is whether Donald J. Trump, through action or inaction, corruptly sought to obstruct or impede Congress's official proceeding to count electoral votes. This committee is entitled to Mr. Meadows' testimony, and it will inform our legislative judgments.
Congresswoman Elaine Luria is a Democrat representing Virginia's 2nd Congressional District. She sits on the bipartisan committee investigating the insurrection, and she joins me now. Congresswoman, let me follow up just starting there with your co-committee members, your fellow committee members' language there, which echoes a part of the federal criminal code around obstructing official proceedings. In fact, those charges have been brought against many of the members who entered the Capitol unlawfully. And I wonder what we should take away from that language and whether that the contours of some sort of criminal referral are front of mind for members of the committee.
Well, Chris, thanks for having me again. What I would say is that as a committee, we're trying to paint the full picture of what happened before, leading up to, and during January 6th. And certainly, any elements of that that reflect criminal activity or something that the committee is very interested in. And all of the pieces we're putting together, and especially this testimony we're trying to seek from Mr. Meadows, is part of that, because Mr. Meadows was the closest to the president. He was with him during that day, during the 187 minutes, over 3 hours of inaction. And, you know, I think it's very important to me, keying into what my colleague Liz Cheney said, either through his action or inaction, he corruptly sought to impede the proceedings of Congress. So I think that all of that picture is becoming more clear, and if there are criminal elements to this, certainly those things will be made clear to the public and provided to the Department of Justice as we move forward.
There's been talk about members of Congress who were texting with Mark Meadows, which, again, at one level, members of Congress, Republicans texting with the White House Chief of Staff is not surprising. Presumably that happens all the time. It's in the context of this that those are quite striking, including the one yesterday that sort of mournfully talked about it didn't work out yesterday. What a sad day. There's a question about who those members are and whether the public has a right to know who they are and when we would find that out.
Well, I certainly think the public has a right to know. I would say that the committee chair is being very deliberate about when we release that information, because we don't want to impede or interfere with the investigation and other witnesses we're speaking to at this point. But you can certainly expect to hear those names and probably very soon. But I think that maintaining that within the committee until we're ready to release it publicly is very important to the progress of our investigation right now.
The referral, I imagine you anticipate it will be voted out tonight. Will pass probably on a near party line vote, although I imagine Kinzinger and Cheney will vote with the Democrats on this. What is the goal here? The goal is, I imagine, to actually get Meadows' testimony, because it seems to me that unlike some of the other people, all of whom testimony seems relevant, Meadows' testimony is probably the single most germane witness in all of this because of the reason you cited, which is he's side by side the president for those 3 hours.
I think the goal in all of this, the goal is not to go after these people. We want these people to come speak to Congress. Right. There are over 300 people who've already come voluntarily and provided very valuable information. So the ultimate goal in all of this is to get this testimony because it's key and very important to this investigation.
It's striking, too, that all of these people, including the president's own son, are texting with the chief of staff. I don't know if they're texting or emailing with the president, but in some ways, those texts demonstrate his proximity, that he essentially is acting during that period of time, the crucial 3 hours, as a sort of communicative adjunct to the president if you've got his own son texting him.
Well, it's very interesting to me. I would think, gosh, the president's own son should have a line of communication with them, and to know that he's going through someone else, or perhaps he's not responding to anyone during this time. So perhaps his own son has to desperately try to contact someone who he thinks might be near to him, standing next to him. So it is very interesting that so many people use Mr. Meadows as a way to communicate with the president. And obviously, that's exactly why we need to hear from him.
Sort of sad and poignant in its own small way. Congresswoman Elaine Luria, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Next, two key organizers of the January 6th rally are coming forward to testify. They're ready to name names. What we might learn from their communications with White House staffers and members of Congress.